Right, so we are ready. We hope you are ready too. This is hopefully an exciting presentation on a real-life project that we did for a client in Switzerland for the last couple of years. And one of the results out of that project has been that we developed a suite of modules for digital signage, which is a new output channel for most of the Drupal users. And we want to introduce that suite of module, which is, I can tell that upfront, available open source on Drupal.org and can be used by everyone. But before we dive into technology itself, we would like to give you some ideas on how relevant digital signage could actually become in a very near future regarding into several industries, verticals, where you probably haven't thought about yet that digital signage could be a thing. But very shortly and very quickly, I think that's going to change. So what we have prepared is we are looking into 8 different verticals. Very briefly, like real estate, that's the one where actually we started to work for. Gastronomy, restaurants and hotels is another one, and a few more. I won't go into all of them in much detail, but we will give you a really good idea on what's actually going on. So in real estate industry, what Drupal is already used for is beautiful and feature-rich websites in very different areas, some of which are just public websites, others come with extra functionality like an intranet, like communication platforms to have a whiteboard for all the people living in an area and things like that. But if you put digital signage into this framework as well, what you get is like flexible bulletin boards, which means in the buildings you can have displays with the latest information on what's going on with event information, other information system, advertising from service partners like electricians and others. And you can provide environmental information like where is the rail station, what's the next train to leave, and things like that. And in some areas you have visitors as well, like if there are lots of shops and people who come in to visit a lawyer or a doctor or what else. And that means you can also add things like interactive wayfinding systems on your displays, either in just the public area or in the private area as well. Now, another one is gastronomy, restaurants and hotels. Some of them have multilingual websites with a menu on the website, of course. But with digital signage, what you can also do is have a just-in-time or always current information of your daily menus right at the front door for people to look at even before they come into your restaurant. You can have some wayfinding systems, that's probably nothing for a restaurant, but for bigger hotels, where you have conference rooms maybe as well, where you would like to guide people from where they are and where they want to go to. All sorts of information systems can be thought of, banquet information, event information, and so on and so forth. Another one is retail. In retail, we more and more see the fact that you have displays in the shop window where the shop owner presents more detail about the products. As soon as something is moving, colorful, maybe even interactive, you grab more attention from the people walking by. So you have more attention to your shop, and even if the shop is closed, you are doing some business at that point, even if it's only to be in the mind of your potential clients if they otherwise would have just walked by. But also, what you can find more often now is if there are special offers and you have a QR code on them, you can offer people in the street to just take a picture of that QR code and actually trigger an online purchase for them. So instead of them going onto some of the famous online shops, they can just do the same thing in your own shop, and the cost for that is negligible if you already have a website anyways. A very popular one are venues, like conference centers, cultural facilities of all sorts, cinemas, theaters, you name it. And a lot of them already use Drupal websites or other content management systems. But if you supplement them with booking systems or e-commerce sections, you can actually drive real business to your company just from your website. And then digital signage can be added to the play, where already available information, which is in your content management system, can be dynamically be used to feed that into displays to guide people through your facility, tell them about the room occupancy, tell them about the schedules, if something is cancelled or moved to another room, and so on and so forth. All of that can be done dynamically, directly from within Drupal. Local governments, that's one of my famous verticals because it is just everywhere. And think about it, if you have your local government, they have a lot of information which is changing on a daily basis, maybe even on an hourly basis. They have a lot of relevant information they want to and have to communicate to the citizens, or maybe to visitors of the city, if you like. But they are not yet using modern technology like digital signage too often. They more and more use Drupal distributions for local governments. But what you could do there as well in a distributed format, where you have in your city, you have your town hall, you have your libraries, you have your schools, you have lots of other facilities all around in your city, each of which could be utilized with a public display, and a central Drupal installation could then put all the relevant information onto those screens where it most matters. You can give them wayfinding information as well. You can communicate incident information. You can make public announcements and so on and so forth. So you are much quicker, you are much more current, and you reach more people with more relevant information in a much shorter period of time with less labor that comes on top of that. You don't need extra people to actually deliver that extra service to all of your citizens. That's really, really a very interesting one. In education, digital signage is probably used the most already, especially for universities or other bigger facilities where you use wayfinding systems and schedules, room locations, and so on and so forth. Not going into all the details for all the pages now or all the verticals, but an interesting one, we just had a discussion about it last week in manufacturing, where just for internal use, digital signage becomes more and more business critical, which is because of fire protection and safety regulations. So a lot of people don't accept a sheet of paper being stick to the wall anymore with some information on a meeting which is held tomorrow afternoon, because a sheet of paper on the wall could catch fire and that could be dangerous. With digital signage instrumentation, you can achieve exactly the same thing without those concerns. And last but not least, transport industry, most of which we think about the public transport, but it's also the case for private areas, where you can provide timetables, incident communications, wayfinding again, and all other sorts of information systems. So this is only a quick overview on 8 different verticals. I'm pretty sure with the experience of all the Drupal agencies around the world, we can probably find another dozen on top of that, where Drupal is already used, and digital signage could be a very nice add-on. Now let's move on to make it more horizontal, like let's collect all the usages or the potential usages of digital signage in the 8 industries. If we collect them into a single list across the verticals, we already come up with, I haven't counted them, but it's maybe 15. And I've highlighted those that are used in more than one of the verticals. And things like wayfinding, scheduling, information system, incident communications, those are the most popular ones that you can probably use almost everywhere. So this is, if you like, the benefit or the potential return on investment for our hopefully future clients. And now let's have a look into what you should do and what you should not do in regard to how to implement digital signage. Let's start on the left with the don'ts. This is in red. You may well think about, some obvious approaches like use a screen with some Windows 95 on it and just play a PowerPoint on it, slideshows. Or just take a video and play the video in a loop. Or just use a web browser and let people interact with the web browser. And there are some dedicated platforms, they do nothing else than just digital signage. They give you some forms where you can put some content in and so on and so forth. And all of these approaches, our recommendation is just don't go for them, because we believe, and we have seen it, they are going to fail rather sooner than later, which is because, you don't have device management from remote. And if you don't have device management, you're taking the risk that your device is just going down without you recognizing it. So in other words, without monitoring, it's not worth to deliver a service which is important to the people you are addressing the messages to. And the other one, which addresses mainly the last one, the dedicated platforms, our belief is nothing is more expensive than redundant content. Because what we are saying with that, most of the content that should go onto one of your displays in digital signage is something you already have elsewhere, on your website, on your mobile app, or in your intranet. So why not using or reusing that content from the same platform? If you go for a dedicated platform, what you have to do is you have to maintain all your messages, all your important messages, more than once. And that's not a good idea. And that leads over to the right side of the slide, which is the do's, like utilize already existing content. What you have on your website or what you have in your database, like for example, a schedule for a rail system. If you already know when the next train departs because you have it in your database, just connect to that database, leveraging APIs, and Drupal, as we all know, is extremely good in leveraging APIs. And then just prepare that data for usage on digital signage devices, which is different from a website. It's also different from a mobile app, so it needs a new approach. But the data source is exactly the same. Now, what you also need, and we mentioned that on the left, you have to monitor your devices, because you want to make sure that they are just turned on, that they are showing the right content, and that this is going on 24/7 if you need that. And also, you should automate your publications. You don't want to sit down and, capture a video every single time a single piece in your slide is going to change. So this is very expensive if you did that. In Drupal or other content management systems, you have individual components like our content entities. And what you want to do is just put them one behind the other, put them in a sequence. This feels like a video if they are presented in the right way, but you don't have to recapture a video over and over again only because one of the pieces has changed at some time. And we all know information that goes on digital displays is going to change a lot and often. So this is just generic recommendation from our experience and from other Drupal agencies that have tried especially the web browser approach. And we just want to tell you, don't go for that. It ain't going to work. Right, with all that in mind, let's move on into what happened in Drupal. And this is what we have done. And if I talk about we, it's Bitegra Solutions. That's the company I founded with a few friends of mine, where we started with one of a big project in Switzerland a few years ago. But we all have many years, sometimes even decades of experience for complex projects. And what we've done is, for the digital signage framework, we have developed a suite of modules which are compatible with Drupal 8 and Drupal 9. They are published on Drupal.org. They are available for everybody's use for free. There is a contribution event hosted by ourselves on Friday this week. So if you're interested in, helping out or getting some influence on the future roadmap of the product, then just come and join us. We are very happy to take help and contribution from everybody. Those modules are production ready. They are already in production for some of our clients. And very important, and I emphasize that because we had that question quite often, those modules are individual modules that you can add on any existing Drupal site. So it's not a distribution that forces you to start from scratch to actually make use of it. It's deliberately a set of modules that are designed in a way that if you already have a website that is on Drupal 8 or Drupal 9, you can later on decide that you would like to add digital signage functionality. Just enable the modules and off you go. It is a matter of minutes to actually get started. And the samples that we used also for the presentation later on in these slides comes from that integrated tenant portal for Magdenhof-Luzern. That's a big area in Switzerland, which we won some splash awards just a couple of weeks ago in Switzerland, which we were very excited about, and we would give a shout out to the client, which is Mobimo, they are generous enough to allow us to actually use that use case in all our presentations. So this is the introduction to the framework, and now let's talk about the advantages or why Drupal is a good foundation for actually using digital signage. Well, first of all, we all know we can build very complex data models inside of Drupal. That's very important because you may have different fields that you need for digital signage with other information components that you don't use on your regular website. And that's why it's a huge benefit to actually be able, without needing a developer, you can actually in the front end add more fields or combine fields or group them while rendering and so on and so forth. What we also have in Drupal is workflow management and revisioning system, as well as automated and time-driven publishing and archiving functionality. Like, for example, you can already put an event into your Drupal site and define a field that you would like to publish that event not before Thursday this week. So you don't want to go in manually and taking the risk to probably forget about it, that event by yourselves. Just put it in whenever you have time for it, and then give it, a flag and say, dear Drupal, just do it on your own, make that public on Thursday, and then remove it from the website again on Monday. And while you do that, it will appear on digital signage devices in the same way, as well as disappear from there in the same manner too. In Drupal, we can also integrate things like e-commerce, calendars, booking systems, and a lot more. Drupal is a fantastic framework with APIs to grab external information and so on. Our flexible theming system is very, very helpful. And of course, the excellent media management system Think about it, having said that 5 years ago, everybody would have laughed, but you know, in Drupal 8 and 9, we can call it an excellent media management system, part of Drupal core. Just turn it on and it just works for you. Now compare all that to, let's say, a dedicated digital signage content management system. If they implement things like device management, that's a big task. If they also want to implement something like a data modeling system and a content management system, that's an even bigger task. And then all the other items here on the screen, we all have that already, so we only have to connect to some of those systems, which allows us to actually connect to external devices. And this is what we've done. So let's have a look into the architecture of those products, of those modules. So what you can see here is 3 boxes with a yellow background. And those 3 boxes with yellow are 3 individual modules on Drupal.org. The main one, top left, is the digital signage framework, which allows you to take any content entity that's on your Drupal site, whether that's a node, a media, a user, or any other, could be a custom entity, doesn't matter. Mark that as being published on digital signage. Give it some attributes like this should only go into all the devices in the staircase or in the garage. And other content you can highlight to be only on public displays, but not on the private ones in the staircase. And then there is a component which we call the Schedule Generator Manager. This is a plugin manager in Drupal terms, which we have implemented one as a default schedule generator, but it indicates that you can write your own. So what happens there is if you have a series of, let's say, 15 content entities that all should go onto a specific display, this schedule generator creates a playlist, if you like, saying which slide comes after which other, and for how long should it be displayed. But if you have a different rule set, or if you even want to build an interactive schedule generator, you can just utilize this plugin system and build that as an optional module on top of that. So the result of the schedule generator then is being pushed to devices, and those devices are then responsible to actually play the content. And to get in touch with those devices, we have built another manager, a plugin manager, and in this time it's a platform manager. So just outside of the yellow box, you can see there is a list of platform modules. And the first one is Signage OS. Signage OS is the world-leading digital signage management platform, which focuses exactly on that component to provide APIs and technology to reach out to all the platforms that you can see on the right on that big display, which is Panasonic, BenQ, Android, BrightSign devices, and so on and so forth. I believe that list is even not complete. There are more platforms already implemented, and of course, more to come in the future. And I'm very happy to give a shout out to Signage OS, their marketing director, joined in today. Please say hi to Luke Gibbs. He's in the audience and he's available today on the on-air platform as well. So if you have any questions to Signage OS, reach out to Luke. He's happy to take your questions and help you out. Now, the third component is what you can see on the bottom left. It's a wayfinding module. The wayfinding module is completely standalone. It can be used even without digital signage if you have on your website probably things like different buildings. You have a lot of business profiles maybe, and you would like to present a map of your area and then a legend with all your business tenants and then allow your website visitors to actually click on one of those business entities, and it will highlight where this business entity is being located on the map. And you could even give them some direction on how to get from where they are right now and how they actually get to the destination that they just selected. That's what we built as a wayfinding module, which is also available on Drupal.org. Download, install it, enable it. And if you use it together with digital signage, you not only get your wayfinding widgets on the website or your mobile app, you then also get it on your public displays. And if your public displays support touch functionality, I mean interaction with the user in front of the display, then the wayfinding module is even more helpful for them. That's something that's also already used with our clients' installations. So the modules, again, and I give you a link later on where you can download the slides, then you have an easier access to all the links that we provide here. The digital signage framework is available as a project with the same name. There is comprehensive documentation available, and it has very few dependencies, which is either Drupal 8 or 9. A couple of contrib modules like dimension, dynamic entity reference, inline entity form, and a few others. Not many libraries. The QR codes you could even leave out, and the plant UML encoding, you will see why we use that in a few minutes when we go to the live demo. The Signage OS module is called Project Signage OS, has some documentation as well, probably not as complete as the one for Digital Signage Framework yet, but that is the only dependency, by the way, that it comes with. So you can give that a try as well. I have to say, if you want to use Signage OS, you need an account with them. They have what they call Box, which is a kind of a dashboard where you get access to your devices. You can provision your devices and you have full control over them. You don't have to use any of their dashboard functionality. All you need is built inside of Drupal, but Drupal makes use of the APIs coming from the Signage OS box. And if you want to sign up for an account, please reach out. We have a partnership with Signage OS, and we can provide you with the credentials that you need to actually get started and give it a try. And then last but not least, the wayfinding module. Here is a bigger picture where you can get an impression on how it looks like and what it may actually do. Personal note, I don't like the brownish colors on that. I would love that to be more, colorful. It would make an even better impression, but that's what sometimes design agencies come up with. The project is called Wayfinding, has some documentation, and again, very few dependencies. In addition to the dynamic entity reference we saw already before, there is already the geolocation, inline entity form, and the SVG image field. Right. Now, before we go into the demonstration in live Drupal, let's just summarize what the feature highlights are of what you can find in that suite of modules. And I mentioned before, it is really every content entity, even if it's custom entities, the digital signage framework recognizes them all and just makes itself available on the settings form for these elements or for these entity types. And if you have content which is not an entity in itself, like for example views, then we have for that purpose provided a sub-module of the digital signage framework, which is called computed content. That's a content entity type which allows to embed things like views. And if you have computed content enabled, while you create your view, you find an additional new checkbox saying, make this view available as computed content. And from that point on, you can make it available on digital signage with all the configuration, with all the settings as any other content entity like notes or media or whatever. The plugin frameworks are extremely powerful. I mentioned them before, especially for schedules and for platform integration. The remote device management is extremely important, and one thing that costs us a lot to develop, but it's now completed, is the preview in Drupal. So you can actually have a rendered view of the output inside of your Drupal even before sending it to the remote device, which is helpful because you may want to check if the amount of content that you put in the body field, for example, is sufficient and matches or fits on the screen still. You can configure devices like put them on landscape or portrait and many other things. You can push schedules directly out of Drupal. The whole architecture is built that devices, once they receive the schedule, they can work in offline mode, which in some circumstances is very important because customers don't want them to be connected to the public internet all the time. You can collect screenshots from the devices to actually see if they show the right content, even if they are hundreds of kilometers away from your offices. And you can receive logs like debug and error logs. Regarding the design on your slides on the remote devices, we do support layout builder. You don't have to use it, but you can if you want. We have built-in overlays and underlays. So if you have some content which is changing regularly, but you have some standard components that are on every slide, then put them on an overlay and you only send them once to the devices. We are not inheriting CSS from your website because that would end in a hell of overriding some properties. The design on public displays is completely different to a website, which is why we decided to build this in a way that you start from an empty CSS, which turned out to be very helpful. Fonts are supported separately, and we support dynamic QR codes to allow people to actually grab a QR code and then move on from their mobile devices. Dynamic content is a powerful feature, like, for example, for timetables, where we don't want to update the schedule on a display just because only the timetable changed. So the timetable component is indicated that I'm a dynamic component, in other words, a block. And then this block is designed that it grabs new and fresh updated content from Drupal on a regular basis, and the time in between an update can be configured. Emergency mode as well. You can define in Drupal content entities, any number you like, and mark them as emergency entities, some of which could probably say, hey, building on fire, please leave as quickly as possible. The other one could be the elevator is broken, please don't use it right now. And all of those get provisioned to all of the devices up front. And if an emergency occurs, your managers in Drupal can actually just turn on emergency mode on one, many, or all of your devices, and that will change instantly the content on your remote devices. Because in an emergency, you most likely don't have the time to capture some information and push it to your devices there and then. And I mentioned before, touch-enabled displays is supported as well. So there we go. I think that's about it. And please use the Q&A section of the on-air platform. We are happy to answer all your questions later on. And if we run out of time, rest assured we want to answer all your questions, and you can come back to the session at any time and then review our answers later on. There are 4 components that we want to show: how to edit content, how to manage your remote devices, showing you preview and publishing, and of course the wayfinding system as well. So let's switch over to our browser and that's the customer website that we used for the Splash Awards as well. So that's why we have the allowance from the client to use them on DrupalCon as well. We don't go into details of the site itself too much. There are lots of different entity types, node types. We have lots of, sliders, business portraits and stuff like that. But we want to focus on the, I'm on the German side, sorry for that. I just switch over to the English one. That's probably more relevant to most of our audience here. And we have different content types. I mentioned that before. And for digital signage, let's just capture one of the type info. So I tried that before, of course. So this is the body for the website, and in this case, the client wanted to have a different body for the public displays. So there they want to bring across the message, please join us for Contrib Friday. Nothing special here, we just add some media to see that even sliders and carousels and stuff like that will work. But more important, let's publish that for the website. And then we have a digital signage tab over here, which allows you to drive exactly what you want to do with that content for your digital signage devices. So what we have is emergency mode. We'll get into that in a minute. The label is by default the same as on the website, but if you turn that off, you can put in a different label or title for that one on public devices. It's not dynamic content, but then down here we have different properties like, is this critical content? If so, this one will be in the playlist. Every other slide will be that one. Otherwise, all the slides are spread equally. Each one will occur exactly the same amount of times like all the others. But if you have critical ones, they will happen much, much more often than all the others. You can also drive that with priorities. Higher priority occurs more often. And also you can define, is the content of your slide simple or complex? Simple slides will stay on screen for, let's say, 15 seconds. You can configure that default duration yourselves, the config of the module. If it's complex content, like, for example, there is a lot to read, then it stays twice as long on the screen to allow people to actually grab the content. The count is a functionality where you sell advertising, for example, where you want to make sure that a specific slide occurs, let's say, 200 times a day on a specific screen. What you can do by default, all the content that you publish on digital signage will occur on all your devices. But if you want it to be on just one specific or a number of devices, you can add all the devices here. There is auto select, but you can of course change the widget and make it a drop down or check boxes if you like. Or what you can do using taxonomy, build segments of devices, assign those tags to your devices, and then you can say, publish all that in all the public devices or all the devices in building 27, whatever you like. Now, let's save that one. Another one is like, for example, one of those emergency entities. Before I go into that, you can see here is the kind of display of what it looks like on the website. But if we add an incident, which is not one that actually occurs, but in preparation that it may well happen, the elevator might be broken. And we don't need that on the website, but we need that here, and it should note like, please don't use until further notice. We still publish that. And for digital signage, we publish that as well, but we call it emergency mode, and then all the other attributes are just irrelevant, and that's why they are hidden from the editors. That's about nodes. But as I mentioned before, you can do the same thing for all the content entities, like media entities as well. Like we have here a picture, wherever we want to do that, you can edit that picture too. It's a media element, could be a video as well, or an animated GIF or whatever. And you can say, publish that to digital signage to save that, and that's about it. So this is all about content editing. So for your editors, it's not a new experience only because you introduce digital signage to the suite of modules. It is just the same as before. It's a few more checkboxes, and they need an understanding of what that actually means. Now, whenever you change something in a content entity which might be relevant for a remote device, you automatically get a status message which helps you to get to a preview for digital signage. And this is where we go to the second part of the demo, which is about device management. Here is all the devices that we suit from the remote platform, one of which is this one. And I'm running out of time, so I may probably skip certain things. Just quickly, that's one of the devices. You can have a live preview of what's on the devices. There is a timetable, which is dynamic content. There is a picture over there. There is more complex over here. That's an image. Here is some content. Here is a dynamically created QR code. And here is also a link to the wayfinding functionality, which gives you a map, which gives you a legend, and you can click on one of them. That's Czech's House, and it's in building number 6, and you can find your way to this building. So that's about it. If you like, we can show you later on other things, but yeah, I hope it gave you an idea on how it works and how powerful it is. I would like to quickly get back to our slides and just finish up by pointing you to the contribution date on Friday. We are hosting a session there. We would like to finish off version 2.3 of digital signage and build the future roadmap. If you want to get in touch with myself, Bitegra Solution is the company where you can find me, or you can find me on Drupal, GitLab, on Twitter and Slack with the username Jürgen Haas. It's the same everywhere. So that's about it. Here are a few links. I made them bit.ly links, so you can find this session with the description on Drupal Dixit. You can find the slides on Drupal Dixit slides. And we have also started a Drupal Slack channel, Digital Signage, where you can join us to discuss all you need to know about this piece of technology. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope it was useful. And please fill out the forms after the session to let us know how we did and what we can make better next time. Now, move on to the questions. Right, the first one is from Lucia. Lucio, when implementing digital signage, let's say for a trade fair, which already has an existing Drupal platform, would you add the signage framework to the existing Drupal site or add a separate Drupal instance? First impression, I would always add it to the existing website because there is no harm to it. And you don't have to replicate your content because you can then use the content which is already available and publish that for your exhibition right out of your existing Drupal instance very, very quickly without much effort. Another one from Thomas. What solutions did you use for automation related to the digital signage system displays? Always user hash? Authorization, not automation. Not always. The user hash module, to be honest, we have used for the custom platform. where an external platform is collecting content from a view inside of Drupal. And there, because they had not much experienced developers, the user hash authorization was the easiest one. Normally, we would prefer to use the REST API with their authorization modules they come with. For the integration with Signage OS, there are tokens being dynamically generated, which are used by the Signage OS platform to actually receive content from Drupal. So that's about it. It looks like we are just in time finishing off the session. I can't see any further questions here on the platform. I hope we've addressed them all. I thank you all and reach out, let us know what you think, and have a great DrupalCon.